I think you missed the 12-year-old crybaby he knew a long time ago.
You were a crybaby?
Yeah. Most of the time, he'd have to just stand there and watch me.
When is he leaving again?
Unlike at the Grammys, which happened last weekend, the Oscars do not have a category for Best New Filmmaker or Best New Director. So, in the Best Picture and Best Director categories, you get films by directors like Martin Scorsese, who have been directing films since the 1960s, in the Best Picture category competing up against Celine Song's Past Lives. Past Lives is Celine Song's first ever film, and she both wrote it and directed it. It does seem like quite a year for the writer-director. Scorsese co-wrote Killers of the Flower Moon with Eric Roth. Christopher Nolan wrote the Oppenheimer screenplay, which was a novel first-person style. Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach wrote the Barbie screenplay. Cord Jefferson, who was also a writer, as is Celine Song, wrote his directorial debut, American Fiction, which is also up for Best Picture. There's something to be said for deciding to both write and direct. You can infuse the film with a perspective of your own that you wouldn't necessarily be able to adapting someone else's screenplay for the screen. Past Lives falls into that semi-autobiographical space that very often is the perfect starting point for a film career. If you have a story to tell, a statement to make, why not start by expressing that?
I think that all of it, I think what mattered to me the most in it is that we found the language that was this movie's own. Because I think that something that, as a first-time filmmaker especially, the thing that I was concerned about is for the movie to become an homage of something else, or for it to borrow from some other whole movie that I love. And I think that what I wanted was, first of all, every single decision when it comes to that to be able to stand on its own and be its own movie and develop a language of its own. And I knew that that was the task that at hand, and that's the task that I work through with all my collaborators too. So I think that every time that we were wondering about those things, we were always talking about how we are going to solve the problem of how to do the scene, how to solve the problem that is the scene that we're trying to do for the story and for character.
If you recognize the name Celine Song, which I won't lie, I didn't, but I do remember this now, she's a playwright who has gained quite a bit of traction for her experimental work. Most famously, during the COVID pandemic, she directed a live production of Chekhov's The Seagull on Twitch using characters from The Sims 4. This online theater came out of the fact that Celine Song's play Endlings was cut short during its American repertoire theater run by the COVID pandemic. In 2021, Song was hired as a staff writer for the Amazon Prime show The Wheel of Time. Past Lives stars Greta Lee of Natasha Lyonne's show Russian Doll as Nora Moon. Nora Moon's story is basically the life story of Celine Song, but fictionalized. Celine immigrated from Korea to the Toronto area when she was 12. Celine's father is a filmmaker, Song Nun Han, and was especially legendary for his film Number 3, which starred a young Song Kang-ho in one of his earliest roles. Song Kang-ho would go on to international fame as the dad in Parasite, and huge Korean movies like Memories of Murder, The Host, and Snowpiercer. Number 3 was not technically his acting debut. He had played extras in a few films, but it was his breakout role. Celine's mother was a children's book illustrator with hundreds of books under her belt and got them the artist visa to Canada. Celine grew up around Toronto and then once again immigrated to New York City. Like Nora in Past Lives, the strength of Celine's writing got her an artist fellowship in Montauk, where she met another writer named Justin Kuritskin, with whom she shared her writing, fell in love, and got married.
Well, I think that I think it requires a lot of sensitivity to authenticity or some kind of realism of like human emotions and the way that it can feel to myself, but also to people I know, everybody around us, sort of. So I think it is just, I think exactly that balance is the thing that I'm thinking about the whole time. So anything, if it feels not real to me or not authentic to me or false to me, I'm the only person who can be so honest about that so that I know how to steer clear from that, you know? But I also think that it is about extraordinary emotions in ordinary circumstances. So I think that the depth of emotion has to be earned and built throughout the film. And I think it's like
yeah, so it was constructed that way, sort of.
Of course, Past Lives is a story of a love triangle with Nora Moon's childhood sweetheart coming to visit New York from Seoul. And that happened. Celine sat in a bar at 4 a.m. with her South Korean childhood sweetheart turned adult engineer and white Jewish New Yorker husband, which was the moment she thought about turning the story into a feature film. Interestingly, Celine's plays are known for tackling issues of violence, especially generational violence, and that's thankfully missing from Past Lives, which was filmed both in New York City, in the East Village specifically where Celine lives, but also in South Korea, where Celine got to go travel with her production crew. They were so excited that she was filming in Seoul, as her father is still legendary there for his work in the 90s. Following in his wife's footsteps, in a way, Justin Kuritzkis wrote the screenplay for the movie Challenger, starring Zendaya and directed by the same director as Call Me By Your Name. That is set to come out in April, so we'll see how his screenwriting matches to Celine's. Past Lives is a movie that emotionally, physically, and metaphorically resides in the liminal spaces. From the beginning, when Na Young chooses the new American named Nora, this is a life lived in a transitory state. Nora's life is transitory even by immigrant standards. Nora develops feelings for her best friend Hae Sung, played as an adult by Tae Yo. But her family's moving to Toronto soon, and the friends know that they'll soon be parted. In the age before social media, they lose contact completely. Then, jumping 12 years to 2012, Nora now lives away from her family in New York City after immigrating the second time. At this point, Facebook is around, and on Facebook, Nora finds out that Hae Sung has been looking for her. They reconnect, but their contact, and thus ours as viewers, is mediated completely through screens. Skype, Facebook, webcams. As this is happening, Nora continues to move away from her South Korean identity, and yet feels trapped in this liminal space, uncommitted to this new American existence. Language is used here as a metaphor. Nora only speaks Korean with her mom and Hae Sung. Finally knowing that she and Hae Sung have no way to visit each other, she cuts off contact, hoping that makes her feel more permanently tied to her current life.
난 우리 잠깐 연락을 끊었으면 좋겠어.
왜?
난 이민을 2번이나 해서 뉴욕에 와 있어. 난 여기서 뭔가를 해내고 싶어.
This is when, like the real Celine Song, Nora goes to Montauk and meets Arthur, played by John Magero. Arthur is probably the most neurotic Jewish New York character in any movie I've seen since Woody Allen.
2년. It means providence or fate. But it's specifically about relationships between people. I think it comes from Buddhism.
The film jumps 12 years again. Hae Sung is now an engineer going through a breakup. He decides to take a vacation in New York City to hopefully visit Nora, and by extension, because they live together, Arthur. This causes much anxiety on Arthur's part, as he's convinced Nora might just be swept away and move back to Seoul. Arthur's suspicion of Hae Sung is founded, as he has come here to try to see if he can win Nora.
You were right.
I was?
Yeah. He came here to see me.
But unlike 12 years before, Nora has a life now, a routine, a home, a husband. Even New York City, I think, functions in this movie as a liminal space. The Statue of Liberty, an iconic symbol of the promise of a better life for immigrants, is something that most New Yorkers born and raised, and I can attest to this, have probably never visited. New York City is home to many of the world's international bodies. I mean, even the UN is there. For someone like Nora, this is a perfect place to reside, not truly bound by any cultural definition. The way she relates to her husband through pop culture, movies, books, writing, these might seem superficial, but there's no cultural tie between Nora and South Korea outside of ancestry and memory. Past Lives uses the Korean concept of inyon, which is the inevitable fate and destiny connecting two people. There is a belief that these relationships transcend one lifetime, and inyon connects people over many lives through reincarnation. Nora talks about reincarnation as a spiritual concept, but it also describes the individual snapshots of her life that we see as an audience.
근데 이번에 와서 확인한 사실은 넌 너기 때문에 떠나가야 했어. 그리고 내가 널 좋아한 이유는 네가 너이기 때문이야. 그리고 넌 누구냐면 떠나는 사람인 거야.
The young girl, Na Young, is not the same person culturally, physically, or emotionally. I mean, she cried and wet the bed constantly as a kid, as the confident, creative Nora. And the Nora we see speaking to her mom in the apartment or talking to Hae Sung on the laptop in Korean is not the same Nora we see married to Arthur. Lastly, I liked how language is used throughout this film, and I think it's interesting to compare that with Killers of the Flower Moon, but the Osage language is manipulated by Ernest and William Hale as a key to gain the trust and confidence of the Osage people and disarm them. In Past Lives, language is a barrier, one that Arthur attempts to overcome but is not great with.
안녕하세요. 만나서 반가워요.
Hi, nice to meet you. 아싸. 한국말 잘하시네.
아네.
Again, in this liminal space, Nora must mediate between Arthur and Hae Sung as the only person fluent in both Korean and English. The most awkward and hellish scene, at least if you're watching from the white guy's perspective, Arthur must sit there cut off from the conversation as Hae Sung attempts to explain his feelings to Nora in Korean. But also over time, as Nora puts down roots, she loses some of her connection to her first language, speaking almost entirely in English in her daily life. However, in her dreams, she sleep talks in Korean. This is what convinces Arthur that maybe she's subconsciously planning to be whisked away.
생이라면 우리의 다음 생에서는 벌써 서로에게 다른 인연인 게 아닐까? 그때 우린 누굴까?
모르겠어.